Ombudsman Commission highlights weaknesses in legal system. Deputy Opposition Leader calls on government to reveal Plan B. And it's official, PNG will host the 2016 FIFA Women's World Cup.
This is National EMTV News with Tokana Hasavi.
Good evening and welcome to Wednesday's news. A 2014 discussion paper being circulated by the Ombudsman Commission has drawn particular attention to weak penalties that don't deter those in power from stealing public money and abusing their positions. The paper also points out that the leadership tribunals that get a lot of media attention can't force leaders found guilty of public theft to pay back the millions they've stolen. The paper is one of the first serious attempts by the Commission to draw public input with the aim of strengthening existing laws. EMTV's Scott Wider reports from Ley.
Today, the Ombudsman Commission reopened the regional office in Ley City after a 9-month absence caused by a relocation. The Commission is working to re-establish itself in the Momase region. The last 24 months has been a time of transition. In November last year, the Commission released this discussion paper. It is a review seeking public views on legislation to penalties imposed by the existing laws governing the OC. This is the first real attempt since 1976 to closely examine the weaknesses in the systems governing the Ombudsman Commission.
The laws governing the Ombudsman Commission are quite old, and it was about time for them to be reviewed and refined.
The paper brings to light long-held frustrations expressed by the public on various issues, including penalties served to offenders.
In terms of the penalty which are currently in existence, they have not done enough to deter a misconduct behavior.
In 1975, if you refused to give evidence to the Ombudsman Commission, or if you were in contempt of the Commission, you would have been fined 500 kina or be sent to jail for 3 months. 40 years on, that penalty hasn't changed, and the Ombudsman Commission has found it of little use to prosecute offenders because the penalties don't hurt. Another part of the legislation, the leadership tribunals. Now, they get a lot of media attention when a politician or a senior public servant is referred and investigated. What many people don't know is that even if they're found guilty and dismissed from office, the leadership tribunal can't force him to pay back the money he's stolen.
Not much thought was placed on conducting this big review at a large scale like this. Until the Maladina amendments came on board, that actually got us thinking, we can't wait for politicians to initiate this legislative review. We must take the ownership and do this because we know the business of the Ombudsman Commission.
The distribution of the discussion paper comes at a time when there's a growing public outcry questioning the effectiveness of leadership tribunals and their relevance. The general sentiment is that those who steal millions of kina in public funds should be treated the same as the criminal who robs a shop. Scott Wider, National EMTV News, Ley.
The PNG Teachers Association supports an investigation into the use of over 1 million kina of tuition fee-free funds for the past 2 years, but cautioned the government not to hold back its funding while the probe is on. PNGTA General Secretary Ugwalubu Moana says the government has to release full funding to all schools to keep them operating.
The government's Chief Secretary to Government, Semana Supe Jurenok, recently announced that former Treasury Secretary Simon Tosali will lead the investigation to find out the use of 605 million kina of TFF funds in 2014 and a similar amount this year. The directive was welcomed by PNG Teachers Association, but the General Secretary has warned the government not to hold back TFF funding during the investigation.
That this investigation must be taken seriously, and whilst the investigation is in progress, if the government can pay in full the first part payment of the TFF, we hope that this investigation is not a smoke screen to camouflage the serious problems associated with the application and distribution of TFF funds.
Many schools have reported receiving less money than what they're supposed to receive from its first batch payment this year, prompting the PNG TA to raise concerns on their behalf. The concerns raised are for Education Department to explain why there is a shortfall in TFF payouts in the first batch, whether the Education Department has updated teachers and students' data, and for the department to make known the findings of the Paru IE committee a few years back, who spent over 11 million kina to carry out the district school survey report.
In 2013, Paru High Committee distributed 100,000 kina to all the MPs of the National Parliament, purposely to do school survey data. 3 years down the line, PNG Teachers Association once again called on Mr. Paru Haihi as chairman of that committee, as the former minister responsible and the current minister for education, to come out and explain to the people of Papua New Guinea what happened to the 11 million kina which was distributed for the school survey data. There is no data from that committee.
The PNG Teachers Association is also raising concerns that the investigation team must also extend its terms of reference to include the TFF commodity component, saying it is substandard. They also want the Chief Secretary to include the PNG TA and members of church education agencies to be part of the investigation team. They warned that many schools may send off students in the second school term if funding is not fully released. Quinton Alomp, National EMTV News.
Mr. Moana also said the circular issued by the Education Department earlier this year for schools not to charge fees is illegal. He says school boards of governors can still make use of the provision of the Education Act and collect school fees.
Mr. Moana says school boards can use their powers to charge school fees. He says the Education Act empowers boards of governors to charge fees, and that law was not repealed by Parliament. He says unless it was repealed, school boards can still charge fees.
It's not a revelation that can be downplayed by the government.
His comment comes after many school head teachers and principals are raising concerns about tuition fee-free subsidies not being given to them fully. A month ago, principals of Catholic schools met in Port Moresby and raised concerns that this academic year may have hiccups if TFF funds are not released to them fully. Similarly, public schools are feeling the pressure of overcrowding with limited resources and funding limitation.
There'll be more notices to students to say, go for your term break, don't come back until we tell you to come back.
Despite these concerns, the government still maintains its commitment to its fee-free education policy. The Education Department likewise maintains its stand against schools charging project fees from parents. But the PNG Teachers Association is concerned that the government's TFF funds must be released to all schools according to its current teachers and students' data. Quinton Alomp, National EMTV News.
With less than 90 days left until the 2015 Pacific Games, Deputy Opposition Leader Sam Basil wants the government to reveal its Plan B in the event the Games venues aren't completed on time. He said that the Pacific Games is a huge event for PNG and require the support from both the government and the opposition.
Sam Basil wants the government to come clean on its backup plans should the venues for the Pacific Games are not be ready come July. His comment stems from a number of public outcry on the readiness of PNG playing host to one of the biggest sporting events in the region. Basil said the opposition is ready to help, but will do so only when the government reveals its backup plans.
We will help. We will find ways to help. We will support the committee. We will support the government, but let us know in advance if some venues fail to deliver because of the construction delays, what are our options, so that Papua New Guineans should know and we all can contribute in making sure that this Games is delivered with or without the venues.
A statement from Sports Minister Justin Chachenko this afternoon said every major event project has contingency planning factored into the process, and Pacific Games preparations are no different. He added that the only concern is the Rita Flynn Stadium, and the government has contingency plan in place to ensure netball is played in an indoor stadium. Otherwise, venues are on track and will be delivered on time. However, the deputy opposition leader says it will take months to complete all venues.
This morning I drove past Hubert Murray Stadium. The works on the ground looks like it will take several months to complete.
In reply, the sports minister said the government does not need the opposition's help. That only proves to be deceptive. Vasinata Yama, National EMTV News.
2 weeks after leaving Port Moresby, the official baton of the All Search Pacific Games relay has made its way through the Sepik provinces. The baton was welcomed by villagers in and around the Angaram township in East Sepik yesterday as part of its 100-day journey across the country.
Since departing the Palambe village in Middle Sepik on Monday, the Oil Search Pacific Games relay team continued their journey by taking a small canal off the Sepik River. The relay team entered Kanganumun village and were welcomed by the sound of drums and a Kasawari dancer representing his clan. The baton passed through the hands of local children before the relay team made its way back out onto the river. The men from Yamchan village were next to receive the baton before it moved on to Kamanimbit village primary school, a short distance away. At the school, traditional dancers welcomed the baton with an impressive performance. An orderly queue was formed and the baton was passed down a line of Kamanimbit school children. Still with a 5-hour journey ahead, the team returned to the canoes and continued downstream. Whilst on the river, the baton passed by many villages and was cheered on by locals who had heard the baton was travelling through their part of the world. Next stop was the big village of Kambaramba, close to Angaram. The relay baton did the rounds and locals unveiled a banner made specially to welcome the relay team to their village. And that concludes the baton's tour of the Sepik. After a rest day today, the baton's journey will continue onto Madang province tomorrow. Scholar Sengi, National EMTV News.
Ahead in the news, Delta Company recommissioned, also new policies in the Incentive Fund program, and later in the bulletin, American Jazz coming to town. I'll be back with all the details. Stay with us. Thanks for your company and welcome back to the news. The Papua New Guinea Defence Force Delta Company has been recommissioned today. Delta Company was a key unit of the 1st Royal Pacific Island Regiment, which was decommissioned in the year 2000. Soldiers under Delta Company will form part of the Papua New Guinea Defence Force Company of Excellence.
On parade was the Alpha, Bravo and Charlie Company of the 1st Royal Pacific Island Regiment, or 1RPIR. The parade was hosted to welcome back the Delta Company, which was disbanded following the downsizing in year 2000. The recommissioning of the Delta Company is part of an overall government direction to have 5,000 personnel by 2017. PNGDF Commander Brigadier General Gilbert Toropo described it as a new era for 1RPIR.
The reactivation and inception of the company back to the orbit of 1RPIR is a major boost to the unit and to all of the PNG Defence Force.
Delta Company, on parade!
Delta Company has a long and colorful history. It has always set the benchmark in 1RPIR and was effective during the Bougainville crisis, border control and national elections. The 75 new soldiers under the Delta Company are expected to bring back Delta back to its glory days. To achieve this, they will undergo intensive training regimes as part of the Company of Excellence initiative. Toropo says this is to transform and professionalize the defense force.
These changes are made so that PNG Defence Force can effectively support our people, our government, to effectively and professionally deliver the outcomes.
Toropo challenged all unit commanders to lift their game, as the success of this initiative depends on effective leadership at all levels of command. Mickey Cavera, National EMTV News.
The Australian government today announced Phase 4 of the Australian PNG Incentive Fund program. Australian High Commissioner to PNG, Deborah Stokes, says the new phase reflects the shift in aid policies with more emphasis on empowering girls and women. Formal documents were signed today at the Baraka Primary School here in Port Moresby.
Today was a significant day for both the Australian and PNG government in strengthening the relationship and support to develop Papua New Guinea. Phase 4 of the Incentive Fund program is the outcome of lessons learned and reflections of Phase 2 and 3.
We work with partners who want to improve the conditions in Papua New Guinea, and we're delighted to be taking this program into the future with a fourth phase.
Ms. Stokes said the next 6 years will see 160 million kina available as grants to improve areas in education and health. For the past 14 years, over 300 million has been put out as incentive funds. Phase 4 will now target the empowerment of women and girls.
We will be asking all applicants under the new phase to clearly demonstrate how their proposal will support the empowerment of women and girls.
A special feature of Phase 4 is the inclusion of proposals from the private sector. Ms. Stokes said it's not about subsidizing the private sector, but must be seen as socio-economic development.
The government of PNG acknowledged that while Australia will continue to support the current priority areas, 30% of the current aid program will be reprioritized over the coming 3 years to fund initiatives focused on private sector growth and trade.
Documents was signed and exchanged between the Australia and PNG government to embrace the occasion. Jegla Pave Jr., National EMTV News.
Meanwhile, Australian High Commissioner to PNG, Deborah Stokes, said the good work of the churches should not be ignored now that the invitation has been extended to the private sector for incentive fund. Ms. Stokes said churches have been the sole performing agencies to deliver services to rural areas in the country.
Church organisations, the organisations that have been the traditional partners under the incentive fund, to partner with the private sector, and in so doing leverage even more money for the development project.
Remote villages surrounding Morabe's historical Kayapit station in the Makam Valley will have water supply through a district administration fund project supported by an NGO. It follows years of struggle by the people when seasonal weather patterns changed dramatically. Shorter wet season meant longer dry spells that caused a thirst for reliable water supply. NTV's Bethany Harriman was in Kayapit yesterday and brings this report.
While en route to Ampan Primary School, where our water project was going to be launched by Makam MP Paul Ezekiel, I met 4 women from a village near the old Kayapit station who gave a glimpse into the lives of the Makam people and their struggles to find potable water. They've had to walk 2 kilometers from their homes to find water for cooking and drinking.
Long well, son. Yeah. Long well house. Okay, story.
Mothers in many other villages along the road into Kayapit station say it's been like this for many years. Climate change and the lack of government support have been contributing factors. Martha Thomas said successive governments didn't assist local communities to get clean drinking water. At the turn of the millennium, seasonal patterns changed and the atmosphere, soil and people in the Makam Valley have become more thirsty. It has become far more difficult to find water.
Now let me put it into perspective. The Makam Valley is in the Morobe province, a province that's part of 4 other provinces: the Central Province, Western Province, Million Bay Province and most parts of the Eastern Highlands that are known for their seasonal weather patterns. All of these provinces have significant changes in the amount of rainfall affecting the people's daily lives and the way cash crops are being harvested. For the Makam district, it's known for its cocoa cooperatives.
But for Markham District, the local MP and Housing Minister Paul Ezekiel launched a water project yesterday that's going to be built by World Vision and funded by district funds.
My district is committed and put 100,000 as a counterpart fund to World Vision, and we've sourced water in the nearby mountain range where the water has been captured, elevated and captured, and we're using a gravity feed to supply close to 6 villages.
The move is seen by people in the district as a vital government service delivered to communities that have suffered for far too long. Yesterday's launching is part of 25 other water projects already being carried out in the district. 5 million kina of district funds have been allocated for water projects alone throughout the 9 ward councils of the district. Bethany Harriman, National EMTV News, Ley.
There is increasing concern about the lack of government services in villages located along provincial borders. After his recent visit to border villages in Morobe, Bulolo MP Sam Basil says basic government services are non-existent in many border villages in the country.
We want the national government, we want the provincial government to take ownership of those.
In his quest to bring government services to some of the mountainous villages in the Bulolo district, local MP Sam Basil has discovered that most villages along the Morobe, Northern, Central and Gulf provinces do not have access to basic government services. In his visit to 4 villages in the Wau rural local level government, he learned that education, health and transportation services have been non-existent for decades and villages there are only accessing them now. The excess of these services have resulted from the District Support Improvement Program funds.
So it brings back to me a question of what is the provincial government doing with all the recurrent budget and money that has been given by the national government to make sure that all schools in those areas operate, to make sure that there are teachers, to make sure that there are medicines.
Basil said government services like the building of education infrastructures are the responsibility of provincial and national governments. But over the years, these responsibilities were not materialized, leaving people without education facilities. He said the office of local members are only there to support and maintain the existing infrastructures that the provincial and national government builds. And he questioned whether provincial funds allocated for classrooms in his electorate were spent.
There are people with no boundaries, no land, because of the provincial governments are confused whether they belong to Oro or they belong to Morobe or they belong to Central Province or they belong to Morobe or they belong to Gulf or they belong to Morobe. So those people are being neglected, and I believe that with the DSIP, it's more of a band-aid solution.
The delay in government services arriving at villages along provincial borders stems from their geographical locations. This situation is similar to other villages located along provincial borders in the country. But for Morobe, Basil says, with the limited funds his office gets from the government, he will be using them to bring services into remote areas in Bulolo. Tekla Gunga, National EMTV News.
April is the month of jazz according to the thematic calendar of the U.S. Embassy Port Moresby. American jazz and hip-hop singer Carolyn Malachi and ensemble is in the nation's capital as part of the American Music Abroad project under American Voices. They gave a lively performance today at the Gordon Secondary School.
The name Carolyn Malachi probably would not ring a bell in Papua New Guinea. But the soulful singer and her ensemble are in the country on a cultural exchange called the American Music Abroad project. The U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs has partnered with NGO American Voices to engage with people across the world through the American Music Abroad exchanges.
But more than that, it's a way of connecting with people, especially like with jazz. Jazz is an international language. It's an international voice. Everyone gets it, everyone loves it, everyone understands it. And it's a way to communicate and to interact and touch other people.
The American Music Abroad envoy was at the American Corner at the National Library today and talked to students and visitors about music and about jazz. 30-year-old Caroline Malachi earned a Grammy Award nomination in 2011 for Best Urban and Alternative Performance.
Music is a universal language. We've played shows where people maybe don't speak English, but everybody's sort of like humming along or trying to sing along to the lyrics. And we've incorporated, folk songs into our performances, and that has also drawn people in. So what we're looking forward to here in Papua New Guinea is sort of the same, like just everybody being open to the moment, everybody participating in the inspiration of the evening.
After the library, Carolyn performed at the Gordon Secondary School. Backed by Tobias on drums, James on the piano, and Kevin on bass.
Gordon Secondary School is privileged to be one of 2 schools to participate in the people-to-people exchange. Tomorrow, the team will visit the Maranville Secondary School outside the nation's capital. In the evening tomorrow, between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m., the team will perform at a special concert at the Lamana Gold Club. Dele Bagu, National, EMTV News.
And now we check out the finance news. The kina closed unchanged at $0.3735 in the interbank market. At Bank South Pacific, the kina was buying $0.366 $0.4758 Australian dollars, €0.3339 and 43.57 Japanese yen. Looking at commodity prices at New York close, gold, coffee and cocoa closed the day lower, copper closed higher, while crude oil, copper and palm oil closed the day higher as well. And lastly, on the stock market, the Dow Jones closed at 5 points lower, the ASX closed at 34 points higher, and the All Ordinaries closed at 35 points higher. You're watching National EMTV News tonight. We'll bring you more local stories as well as international headlines after the break. Stay tuned. Good to have you back with the news. The student boycott at the PNG University of Natural Resource and Environment has attracted high-level government attention. The Higher Education Minister Malakai Tabar made a special visit to the Vudal campus in East New Britain yesterday for the first time after the boycott began 3 weeks ago. The boycott followed a petition presented to the University Council calling for the reinstatement of the SRC that went obsolete in 2009. MTV's Edwin Fidelis reports.
The Higher Education Minister Malakai Tabar yesterday authorized the University Council to allow for a student committee to be appointed. Now we gave the University Council 5 days to call up an SRC election. Speaking to the students at Vudal yesterday, Tabar told the University Council to take note that it is legal to have a student representative council in place.
And we actually gave University 6 days to act upon our petition.
Last month, the student body petitioned the university administration and demanded the re-establishment of the SRC that has not been functioning since 2009.
We have been suppressed from talking, and none of the student representatives has been invited in the council meeting from 2009 all the way up.
Last week, the student body protested and threatened for a mass withdrawal from the institution. They also forced the closure of all administration operations, including all lecture halls. After almost a month, there was a breakthrough made. Now the university is expected to have an effective SRC in place before next Monday. This comes after 5 years without a student representative council. Edwin Fidelis, National EMTV News, Leh.
The ROI Health Centre in Bougainville wants the proposed School of Nursing to immediately enroll its first intake in 2016. Resident Medical Doctor Joe Velosi says the capacity problem urgently calls for more manpower. MTV's Fabian Hakelitz files this report from Buka.
The reconstruction of ROI School of Nursing is a dream that Dr. Joe Velosi would like to see happen. The clinical staff capacity problem is a signpost for an emergency response from the National and Bougainville Health Departments to act.
Good number of our nurses are past the retirement age. As well as that, the population has gone up again, which puts a strain on the current manpower.
Dr. Velosi is against the health authorities' decision to build the nursing college in 2020. He claims it's far too late. The health center is in desperate need for more clinical staff to facilitate medical care.
We should push forward for a nursing school to start as soon as possible. I think that's my stand from Arawa Health Center.
A strong appeal to authorities for the decision to be reviewed because health deals with human lives. Meantime, Dr. Velusi called on stakeholders and the health centers board to work together for common good. Fabian Hakalitz, National EMTV News, Boka.
Turning overseas, the execution of 2 Australian drug convicts will continue despite legal plans by their lawyers to continue appeals, says Indonesia's Attorney General. It comes a day after an Indonesian court threw out a challenge to the presidential clemency rejection filed by the 2 Australians. On Monday, an Indonesian administrative court rejected last-ditch legal challenges by Australian drug convicts Andrew Chan and Miran Sukumaran, who are facing execution by firing squad. They challenged the court's decision not to hear an appeal against President Joko Widodo's refusal of clemency. The rejection means the 2 men have exhausted all their legal options.
Of course, I am not satisfied with the judgment today, but indeed, we will have to respect what the court has decided. But it's not stopping us to give our continuous effort, and therefore we are about to file a constitutional review to Constitutional Court.
Although the plaintiff's lawyer vows to seek the presence of a constitutional court, Indonesia's Attorney General, Muhammad Prasetyo, says it won't change the outcome.
The administrative court has already rejected the claim. We all know that clemency is not an object to argue in the administrative court, so it is finished now. We also heard that they will file a judicial review to the Constitutional Court. That's their business. We are not affected at all. And if they file it, it won't change the decision that has already been made. We will not wait anymore, and the legal process will not hinder the execution.
Prasetyo has yet to announce the date of execution, but hinted it will happen after the Asian African Conference due to take place in Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, later this month. President Joko Widodo has pledged no mercy for drug offenders, describing his country's trend of trafficking drugs as a drug emergency. And National EMTV News continues with Trukai Sports. That's coming up next. And soccer boss David Chung announces preparations to host the Women's World Cup Soccer. Stay with us for that and more.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome to Trukai Sports. FIFA Vice President David Chung officially announced today that PNG will be hosting the Women's World Cup in 2016. 16 nations will be participating in this highly competitive event. Now, this adds to a number of big events that PNG will be hosting in the coming years.
It is first of its kind for women in PNG to participate in the Under-20 FIFA Women's World Cup next year in November. The government has proposed Port Moresby, Lae and Kokopo to be the host locations. However, this is not confirmed, as a team from FIFA will be coming to PNG to do feasibility studies in other provinces to select the right venues.
We must ensure that we have the best events, hosting the best events forever, so that we leave a legacy behind for this country and for football.
As this is a highly competitive event, the government is proposing a 10 million kina fund to assist FIFA. A further 2 million kina will be taken out from the Community Development Fund to train the national team in preparation for the Games. The government is now trying to incorporate sports in its development agenda and use it as a tool for community development. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill says the sporting infrastructures built for the Pacific Games can be seen as an economic spin-off.
Our country is now starting to host very major international events, and this is, you can't get any bigger than FIFA. And I know that soccer has been loved by many of our citizens, especially those who play and, of course, participate in this sport.
Meanwhile, Mr. David Chung said the girls who are selected to participate in the FIFA Women's World Cup will have to skip school for the whole year and prepare for the game. Vasina Tayama, National EMTV Sports.
The Games Organising Committee has signed on 144 local community groups in Port Moresby to provide various services during the Pacific Games. The Community Engagement Plan provides opportunities for all different levels of non-profit groups to be involved commercially in the event. MTV's Elijah Levet has more on this report.
The 144 groups who signed on today are made up of women, church, sporting and youth groups from Port Moresby. The program, which took applications from groups last year, will involve well over 1,000 people to help clean venues, feed spectators and ensure that the hundreds of thousands of pieces of equipment, display items and kilometers of cable runs are all done in time. Most of these groups will be dedicated to catering meals for spectators, while the rest will be responsible for cleaning and waste management. They will be trained by Eucharist Catering on how to handle and prepare meals safe for public consumption at games venues. Cleaning and waste management groups will be trained by commercial cleaning companies to make sure all venues are clean and ready for each competition day.
Additional contracts will be awarded in the next 2 weeks to provide much needed manual labor of the venues in June through to July to help move and place pieces of equipment. Elijah Levet, National MTV Sports.
8,000 tickets have been sold since the 2015 Pacific Games tickets were launched. There are a number of tickets that are running out fast. The swimming sport package and the opening ceremony tickets are close to being sold out. GOC Chief Executive Officer Peter Stewart said the Games will be here in the next 87 days. The sale of the tickets mean we are Games ready and the venues will be available. In addition to the 17 BSB selected branches that are already selling the Games tickets, the Games Organising Committee will be announcing additional outlets this Friday. And True Kai Sports continues after the break. Stay with us.
True Kai Sports.
Good to have you back with True Kai Sports. In AFL, the successful rollout of the AFL PNG New Kick program last year is evident in the increase of primary schools in Port Moresby, registering for this year's junior AFL competition. Marion Barracks is now the home of the new junior AFL in the nation's capital. MTV's Elijah Levet has more.
20 schools have registered in this year's junior AFL competition. AFL PNG is organising a competition next month which will feature under 12s and 13s.
During the competition, we'll do a selection for them to go over to Lear. In caving, they have a Lear challenge which are schools in caving, especially international schools that play against each other.
The New Kick program is the reason for renewed support from schools in the sport of AFL.
We're very interested in to see the interest growing in the number of schools taking part in the school competition. And we can see that the New Kick program itself is really engaging in the schools that we have gone to have really keen interest in the schools for the students in taking part in the school competition.
More than 60 teams are vying for the title in their 5 respective divisions. The secondary school competition is set to commence in 2 weeks' time. Elijah Levet, National MTV Sports.
True Kai Sports ends on that note. The weather details for the next 24 hours coming up after the break. Stay tuned.
True Kai Sports. True Kai Sports.
Looking at the weather forecast for tonight and tomorrow in southern region, brief evening showers expected in Port Moresby and Karama, fine weather in Daru. In Momase, showers and thunderstorms in Vanimo. In the New Guinea Islands, a shower or two in Lorengau, showers and thunderstorms in Buka and Kimbe, brief showers in Kavieng and a few showers expected in Kokopo. And in the Islands region, all centres morning fog, then evening showers. Recapping our top stories again before we go. Ombudsman Commission draws attention to weaknesses in the legal system. Also, Deputy Opposition Leader calls on the government to reveal Plan B. And it's official, PNG will be hosting the 2016 FIFA Women's World Cup. And that's been the news, sports and weather this Wednesday from the news team. I'm Tokana Hasavi. As always, thanks heaps for your company. You take care and stay safe. Good night.